Hi, welcome to Part A, Exploring the Role of a Mentor. Before we start, I'd like you to pause the video here and write down any questions you'd like answered during the session. Now that you've resumed, if these answers that you've written down were not able to answer during the session, there will be an email link at the end which you can send your questions to. The objectives of the session. Well, to begin with, it's to develop expertise to enable trainee teachers to meet the required teaching standards. It's to develop a deeper understanding of the role of the mentor. This is generic mentor training, so it transcends all key stages, all the way from early years to key stage 5 and really beyond. This training will cover the principles of mentoring across all areas of the curriculum. To begin with, could you please write down your responses to these 3 questions and then resume the video once you've done. What is mentoring? What is the purpose of mentoring? And what are the benefits of mentoring? Think about the mentor, think about the mentee, think about potential students. Excellent. Now that you've answered these questions, we'll unpick them a little bit. Definitions of mentoring. I'll give you a moment to read these 2 definitions. As you can see, there's 3 things that are similar to both definitions. The first is this idea of transferring of knowledge from a more experienced to a less experienced person. The second is the idea of mentoring as a learning process or a learning journey. And the third concept of mentoring here is a mutual relationship with a clearly defined goal. In our case, it's to help trainee teachers meet the teacher standards so eventually they can be recommended for QTS. The purpose of mentoring. So we realize that mentoring is sort of a journey, a learning process, and our trainees come into teaching at several different starting points, just like students. So to borrow Kolb's experimental learning concept here, trainees often start at the top with this idea of feeling. So they have these sorts of concepts about teaching and learning, often drawn from their own experience in school as students, or in previous work experience they have working in schools. And then they come into the classroom and they observe, practice. They see how teachers interact with learners, and they look at concepts of teaching and learning. Then it brings us to abstract conceptualization at the bottom. This stage is when they reflect about what they've seen in light of their feelings. So then they start to negotiate what went well, even better if, how would they apply it. And the fourth step here under active experimentation is actually, once they've consolidated this reflection, is to go into the classroom and practice what they've seen or their ideas of teaching and learning. And it's a complete cycle. Our purpose really is to help trainee teachers and support them during this experimental learning cycle. There's some obvious benefits of mentoring for both pupils and mentors. I won't go into these, but the most obvious benefits are to the mentees or the trainees themselves. And I'd like to just focus a minute on this. The obvious benefit of mentoring to the mentees is that they have support and guidance within the school setting. They can get practical teaching experience and knowledge which you can only get from being within the classroom. It's a really unique opportunity for trainees to really develop and try out different pedagogical strategies within the classroom. Right. I'd like you to answer these 2 questions, please, and resume the video when you've done. We'd like you to list the qualities of your ideal mentor and what skills does mentoring involve. Next, I'd like to introduce you to the new national standards for mentors. These are non-statutory, however they are recommendations from the Carter Review in 2015. The purpose of these mentor standards is to foster greater consistency of practice by mentors through identifying effective characteristics of mentoring. And if we're able to raise and foster greater consistency, this should lead to improved and coherent experiences for trainee teachers to develop into effective classroom teachers. The second is to raise a profile of mentoring and provide a professional framework. The third is to contribute towards building a culture of CPD, coaching, and mentoring in schools. The new mentor standards are only four. They're personal qualities, teaching, professionalism, and self-development. And we'll unpick these in a moment. Standard 1, personal qualities. If we look at some of the language here, approachable, effective interpersonal skills, integrity, respect. It's very much that pastoral sense. It's about establishing trusting relationships and modeling high standards of practice. It's about supporting your trainee teacher. Standard 2 is very much focused on teaching and learning. It's very much that role of the advisor and the model here, and the assessor. It's to support trainees to develop their teaching practice, to set high expectations of all pupils to meet their needs. So it's very much about supporting them in effective behavior, classroom management techniques, helping them develop their approaches to planning, teaching, and assessment, including marking. And it's about you giving timely feedback on lesson observations. I'd like to take a moment and look at brokering opportunities to observe best practice. That might be facilitating for your trainee to observe other teachers within the department or the school. It's also about allowing them to access resources that you might have already in place in the department and encouraging them to develop their own. Standard 3, professionalism. This is really important that trainees are aware of who the safeguarding lead is within the school, and they're aware of the safeguarding policies and documentation that the school has. All of our Kingston University students would have had a safeguarding lecture before entering school. Also, Standard 3 professionalism is a chance for you to iron out your expectations in terms of the trainee. This could be things such as dress code, timings of the day, so forth. And Standard 4 is self-development and working in partnership. Really, this is just to ensure consistency by working with other mentors and partners to moderate and make judgments. This could include the joint observations that members of staff from Kingston University do with school mentors. It could be mentor training that you've come to for Kingston University and continued for professional development. Next, I'd like you to take a moment, pause the video and consider the following. What did you appreciate about your own mentoring experiences? Were there any aspects you did not appreciate about being mentored? Consider and reflect back to your own mentoring. So what trainees really appreciated generally was a mentor that was generous with their time. And we know increasingly in schools finding time is a challenge, but a mentor that was available really for them to give advice or to give some suggestions. I'll let you read through this list on your own. The PowerPoint is available, but I'll just distill it into 4 brief statements. So they really appreciated a mentor that was able to provide constructive feedback, was good communication skills, approachable, and really a strong classroom practitioner and modeled strong teaching. Some of the things the trainees didn't appreciate were mentors, again, not making enough time for them, lack of feedback, lack of advice, and personality clashes. I'll let you pause the video here, and what I'd like you to do is compare the statements you identified as qualities of a great mentor, and I'd like you to review the mentor standard. See the statements that you made as qualities of a great mentor, and see how many of them link to the mentor standards. Next, we'd like to look at key things you can do to support your trainee. For more information, please refer to the University Handbook for Mentor Training. Next, I'd like to look at your initial key meeting, and looking at personal and professional conduct and what should be discussed in your initial meeting. Each mentor and mentee relationship is unique. However, it will have some key steps and key features that are similar throughout. The first thing you want to do in your initial meeting is make the trainee feel welcomed into the school. Give them a space to work if possible, and a space where they can make their own, really, if possible, within the school or department. You want to share of teaching tools and resources. Introduce them to key members of staff or key members that they'll specifically be working quite closely with. This is the key time to look at important school policies like safeguarding, behavior, and even staff uniform, and really iron out those expectations. What you also might want to do is really think and consider how you'll introduce the trainee to the class for the first time. Will you introduce them as a trainee teacher, which probably isn't most suitable? Or think about, be creative. Would you introduce them as an expert in this topic of work that you might be working with over the term? Think about how you'd like to do that. Encourage a trainee to get involved with school activities and giving them a holistic picture of the school, and also asking the trainee about themselves and their background. Is this the first time they're living away from home? How much teaching experience do they have? General background questions so that you're able to paint a larger profile of this trainee as well. I'd like to draw your attention for a moment to challenge and support guidance. So, when might a trainee need your support? When might a trainee need you to challenge them? And when might you need to do both? I'd like you to pause here and consider these questions. To try and help explain this concept, I'd like to draw on Dallos's concept. On the left, going vertically, you have level of support, and at the bottom, going horizontally, you have level of challenge. Now, ideally, optimally, we'd like to be in that real balance between appropriate level of challenge and appropriate level of support. And when you reach that balance, you're in that top right quadrant of maximum growth. And this is the real optimum area in terms of development and growth. However, we know that mentoring is not a science, and therefore at certain times you might need to withdraw some of the challenge and introduce more support. And equally the same, as that placement goes on, the lower level of support you should be giving, and equally the higher level of challenge. And this is supported by, if we look at a learning journey, we know that often learning doesn't fall in a nice trajectory like the scale on the left. We know that actually learning, it can go through various stages. You can peak, you can plateau, you can go through real dips throughout that stage. And you can really, if you get to look at number 3 there where you're at no, you can really get to a real low point. And actually the art of being a mentor, going back to Dallos's concept, is knowing when to strike that balance of more support or more challenge, depending upon where the trainee is at in their learning journey. The last thing I'd like to say about mentoring is it really is a wonderful and enriching experience. However, it does require time. The impact you have as a mentor is really huge in terms of shaping the future of classroom teachers for our country and beyond. And our trainees really do appreciate and recognize the amount of time and effort that you put into it. And I think at the end, if you've mentored before, you can relate to what I'm saying. It really is quite fulfilling. Thank you. And enjoy your mentoring experience.